Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here on this first Sunday in January. Happy New Year. I'm really excited that today we have a very special guest, makeup designer Donald Mowat, who has so many endless credits of beautiful, celebrated work in this industry, but also has been so kind enough to do a lot of education and mentorship. And I really love meeting people who have been working for decades, but still have a deep passion and care for the craft and artistry. So we're all in for a treat here today with Donald. A couple of house rules. Please don't interrupt each other, but do participate in the conversation. As you can see, this is a small group, and we really want to bring the humanity and conversation into our little Zoom boxes. We're going to have Donald introduce himself and talk about his career and how he got started, and also how he sees the industry has been shifting today. And then we're going to go into some audience questions where you guys can just hop in and ask Donald about whatever is on your mind. We also have some pre-submitted questions, so if it gets quiet, don't panic. I have many pre-submitted questions that we can also go through as well. So, with all of that, Donald, the floor is yours. Take it away.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming on and Happy New Year, January the 4th. I'm really happy to be here because the Art Craft New York is a very important program that means an awful lot to me. And having worked a lot over the years in New York and well, all over, it's really important now with the ever-changing world, as people keep saying. We have to also be ever-changing with it and trying to adapt and the styles and the way movies are made and television is made and what we do from a design, whether you're costume or makeup or scenic or prop, whatever. It's just we're entering something very difficult, and it has been. And I think this just helps people navigate. I know for newer people and younger people are easily triggered, and it's a problem I'm coming to terms with of how I can't be triggered because I have to run the show and run a department. And it's trying to maybe bridge, I think, training and mentorship to newer people that it's okay. It's okay to be anxious. Everybody, I want to train new crews and people to function and manage and sustain in the world we live in. And I think when I meet friends outside of the industry, and I don't have many of them, I'm fascinated at how they work, of what they do differently than what we did, and the sense of their, I guess their creativity, because it's such a personal thing for everybody here who does something, whether you write or paint or take photographs or draw or do costume design. It's such a personal thing. It's very hard to explain to other people how you feel about what you do. All I'm interested in is doing what you do, and you have to find the time in it. And I guess that brings us to introducing myself because, contrary to popular opinion, I do find it a little difficult to say, my name is Don, this is what I do, because we have a different journey, and I've been learning this. I'm mentoring a director, an actor, writer at the moment, and I do find myself having to say, wait a second. We're all on a similar path, just trying to do something creative. It's just, why don't we help each other more instead of being tormented by this process? So when I started, for those who know me well, I love the business. I love show business, movies, TV, theater. I've loved it all since I was a little kid. I mean, I would skip school to go see Barry Lyndon. I mean, other kids were like seeing, I don't know, Grease, which I thought was really stupid. Um, I liked Barry Lyndon. I love the look of it. I thought the art, the sheer, the beauty, the portraiture, the costumes, you note when you're 10 or 11 and you're noticing that, then you have a kind of an imagination um, for something. And then I saw The Exorcist. I snuck into it at Cinema 5. If anybody knows where that is in Montreal, it was a very famous movie theater, originally called The Egyptian, which is sadly they're trying to bring it back. But it was one of those repertory cinemas. And you could be 13 or 14 and get into every movie. Nobody asked for ID. I mean, they must have just thought we were all very peculiar looking young adults. And, but we went to see films and I was fascinated by them. And that's really how I got started, knowing I wanted to be part of something, getting to work in amateur theater and I guess the camaraderie. And I think I did have an imagination that was a little bit, maybe a little out of control and maybe eccentric, but that's what we do. And I couldn't do math and I couldn't do anything that would ever get me a real job. And my poor parents must have thought, what are we going to do? Um, I mean, I barely made it through high school by the skin of my teeth. I was able to get through. So that's how I started being like this funny kid in high school, in not that bougie a high school, but bougie enough that there was drama class. So that should tell you enough. If they teach drama in the school, you're going to a kind of a privileged school. That's my take on it. And this is 100 years ago. So that's how I got started. But I guess I guess my point in telling you this long tale of that I think we all have very similar paths where someone will. What I realized very quickly is that I could sort of do this for somebody and do in CJEP, which was a bizarre concept they have where I come from, to put a bunch of kids from high school, pre-university, into a school and take sculpture and painting and art history and English and all these things, but meeting other people who had similar interests. And one guy said, look, you do that, I'll take pictures. So that's how I started a portfolio. And I think that sense of community is what I strive to teach today, that people have no concept of. And the art department, which does include makeup, it's always been makeup, hair, costumes, props, scenic painters. It's a massive department that is the essentially the whole, well, the whole guts of the film, the whole production design says it all, doesn't it? And I met through school, through amateur theater, photo shoots, people who started to barter. Hey, why don't you do that? And then I'll do this and create this community. And I started getting jobs, and I ended up getting hired on non-union, low budget, no budget horror films, and went to Toronto and was able to get on Anne of Green Gables because I actually knew what the period was and how they should look when people were still doing Dynasty or Dallas makeup on period miniseries. So that's how I started. I ended up on the fly in the prosthetics team, not really terribly qualified, but hey, you really do have to fake it to make it. And I think having, I guess, just enough confidence and enough going, I really can't give a flying fig what they think about me because I spent my life feeling like that, then it was set for me. So that's really how I got started. And one film led to another, and then people taking chances. And why do you call that guy? And then a better job and better money. And then you learn the business, which takes 10 years, then another 10 years to become, I think, who you really ought to be or feel you are, and have those opportunities and luck. And here we are.
And how do you feel the industry has changed? There's a lot of the pre-submitted questions asking specifically about the demands of the makeup department and how you have seen the changes and adapted along your career.
Okay, my favorite television show of all time is Upstairs, Downstairs. Everybody should watch it who loves drama, who loves writing, because they cover 19 from Queen Victoria's reign, for 30 years. They go right into the Depression. And what's fascinating about it is, to me, it's the greatest writing I've ever heard or seen on television. Nothing's beat it to this day. Everyone tries, Downton Abbey, all these other productions. But what's so fascinating about it is when you look at the production values, I kind of love that, their makeup's all wrong. The sets move, like when somebody slams the door and exits a room, the set kind of shakes. It was lower budget, but these two women, Eileen Atkins, the amazing Eileen Atkins, and Jean Marsh, were two unemployed working class actors in London who were sitting in a bedsit, if anyone knows what that is, in a bedsit, smoking cigarettes, writing this thing because their families had all worked as servants, as basically help and staff in these big British homes. Became the greatest, most successful TV show in America. And when I watch it, I kind of think I can still watch it and it relates to everything I go through, or there's everything is covered in it. In World War One, the flu, the Great Spanish Flu, things. So for me, I think that the business has changed that, yeah, technically we do makeups much better, wigs are better, makeup effects, art department, people who can create worlds that I've worked on films where you think that couldn't have been done. I mean, even when they made state-of-the-art films like Space Odyssey or Ben-Hur or I don't know. I mean, there's so many that yes, everything is different now, but I do think it's a little bit like saying people felt when photography became popular, it was going to eliminate painting. Now, I'm not a painter. I love it and it inspires me, but it didn't stop people painting. So there's a lot of fear, and one has to get past it. Years ago, I knew an actress. I won't tell you her name because I really adore her, and it would embarrass her terribly. But she used to read all those self-help books. Made me laugh so much. And there was one because we lost it. We were making a film in London, and we took the tube to go to some show. And she was reading this book. I thought, you need to cover that up. And it was called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. And I thought, what a funny thing to, here you're an actress, you perform in public. And she was the daughter of an opera singer. Anyway, we go to see this show. As we're getting off the train at Leicester Square, Covent Garden, she goes, "Oh my God, my book. I can't live without it. I can't live without it. It's my Bible." And I was like, you really need to take stock here. Anyway, a woman, a much elderly woman, very typically British, she had gloves on and a hat and a tweed coat, came running after us. And she said, "Darling," she said, "here's your book." She says, "Don't feel the fear, just do it." And I thought it was so fantastic that an elderly person would recognize, the fear in young people and what we were all going through. My point in this is that the industry has changed so much and it's terrifying. It was like going from 35 millimeter film into digital. And I've been asked many times from the trade and the Variety and Hollywood Reporter, my sort of christening to working digital was with the unbelievable Sir Roger Deakins. That's how I really got trained from the cinematographer par excellence and his wife James and Team Deakins, and also David Fincher, because on The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, I had never worked. I'd gone from starting as a young person doing 16 millimeter, where you could get away with a lot, into 35 millimeter, which was what we were working in films. And I rarely worked in television, which some of it was still videotape, some was 16 millimeter. And then, of course, David Fincher, who was a pioneer in Hollywood, with Social Network and these incredible films that were digital. And I was terrified. And I remember doing a makeup test in Stockholm, Sweden, with Daniel Craig. And there was a lot of subtle makeup things. There's beat up, there's all kinds of things. And I just kind of recognized right by talking to the right people. And Dave, Jeff Cronenweth, who shot the film, um, he sort of said, "There's no difference for you really, other than you can see everything you're doing right away." And that was something so interesting to me, was the fear got taken out because there were other people willing to say, you have to really assess it for what this is. And I take this back now to other people to say, don't worry when it's digital. And we really were. It was a panic. Makeup, maybe costume, and certainly scenic production design were the most affected by digital. Obviously, and as you know, as a production designer, color, texture, certain depths of materials change, and digital was, from what I knew, was really created for sports events. It was very, very beneficial in HBO. And, here's this guy, people go, he's just some makeup guy. You got to know a lot of shit. You got to know a lot of stuff. Well, what led to this? How did this happen? And I think that's how I became very fine-tuned to go from TV to feature film. And now, of course, many people are going back to traditional film. So we've gone sort of full circle, and movies are not dead, contrary to popular opinion. And so these fear is a lot of fear mongering, but I won't bore you with all of this except to say everything changes. But I went to have um, like a hospital test, with like just regular stuff and have blood tests and whatever. And talking to people who do that, um, it's not the same. They don't draw blood the same way. They don't do anything the same way. They don't medicate the same. They don't write down the charts now. It's all done by computers. So what makes us so different? Um, I'm a sucker for writing it down because I never forget. And people on my crew are so shocked when I say write it down. I don't care. You can have the 10 computers. Everybody's doing their computer. But if somebody says, what happened in scene 42? Is he bloody? Is he clean? Does she have a wig on? Is she dead? People don't know their notes because they're not writing it. So that I learned from my father is that you have to write everything down. So, you know, these very big studio movies will say to me at the end, I was doing a Scorsese film. And I got this note saying, now that we're wrapping, we'd like all your digital files in triplicate and blah, blah, blah. And I just sent them the book. And they were appalled. There was a book with notes and scratches and coffee stains and some makeup stains on it. And I said, I promise you. Okay, 6 months later, Marty decides we have to reshoot the ending of The Departed. Matt Damon, Mark Wahlberg. Fabulous film. They have to shoot, I can't remember the reason. Anyway, it's the big finale. Those who haven't seen it, I won't spoil it, but it's kind of fabulous. But it's like 6 months later. Well, nobody's got the pictures. Nobody's got anything. Well, who made a copy of their notes? Good to go. So you do what you know is right. And that's it. That's what's changed is nothing's changed. A lot of it's talk, a lot of it's bells and whistles, a lot of it means 10 other people are doing jobs that are kind of yours or micromanaging. You just have to know what everything is and be clever enough to find out how it used to be in order to move forward.
I love that perspective. Thank you, Donald. Does anyone have questions? You can follow up questions about career, but you can also feel free to ask specific technical questions or questions about specific projects. Anybody? Okay, I will continue asking questions for now, but
Pressure.
don't be
Okay.
shy. Donald, you were mentioning working with Roger Deakins, and you've worked with so many amazing cinematographers. There was a pre-submitted question, wondering what that collaboration looks like and what kinds of conversations you have early on to make sure that the makeup is really going to read on camera in the way that you imagine.
I think working with Roger, I found very interesting because having when I met him on, of course, who doesn't know his work, on Skyfall, Bond, that particular Bond was a big departure for the franchise. And Daniel Craig and Barbara Broccoli really wanted to make him more human and more take away from that kind of dated perspective. People were getting what were 2011, excuse me, 2012. It's going to be London Olympics. There was a lot happening in the world. And I think people were starting to feel Bond was dated. Bond should be a woman. Bond should be this. It was just a lot of people talking. And the film, the one prior, had not been a success called Quantum uh, of Solace, had not been a success in the franchise. I think it was one of their biggest failures, actually. So here comes Skyfall, and Daniel and the writers and Sam Mendes had all wanted to go a different direction and really have a human Bond, a Bond that's not always looking incredible. And of course, I love that. Who said it? Best compliment ever. Wonderful Emily Blunt said to me, "Well, Donald Mowat," she says, "there's no one better to call if to make somebody look fucked up. It's you." And I was, oh my God, thank you, Emily, thank you, because making people look good is not. I mean, it's brilliant and it takes a skill, but it's not the same. It really isn't the same. And I think making somebody look like Daniel Craig, who's, not hard on the eyes, as most women and men would agree with, you think, okay, I'll do this. But what a pressure, because we're going to take him and have him at a state of like pill popping, alcohol. He's fallen out, he's been injured, he's been shot, and make him look pretty horrible for the first part of the film. And it was a lot of pressure. And I think working with Roger took a lot of that away because Roger, he's not from that world either. He's more based in I guess the way I like to work is based in reality and from documentaries, which I love. And so he was, for me, was fantastic because I could say, you think I've gone too far. I mean, look at Daniel Craig in the opening, it's a departure. People kind of loved it because it made, I think, the success of the film was very much based on the humanity of Daniel Craig and Judi Dench. I mean, the love of those characters, to be her last Bond, to be her dying, to see that they have a real relationship, a friendship. I was very proud to work on a franchise movie because usually they're rubbish for, as far as I'm concerned. But it wasn't rubbish. It was beautiful. And Roger made a beautiful looking film that had all the aspects of action and drama and suspense and beauty, with characters that I think the audience were, and which cut to how the late Queen, the late Her Majesty the Queen, had agreed to be part of a Bond Olympics piece, which people may or may not have seen, which was epic, that the Queen decided to participate and act, pretend, and be in which was unbelievable. The success of that film and what it did for people's morale. And so working with Roger was we did Sicario together, Prisoners, and Blade Runner, and every time was a new experience, and it was always digital. I learned a lot about the Alexa cameras. I felt more comfortable. I always sat with them. I helped change, I think, the way we perform our craft. And certainly with Jeff Cronenweth that I was able to work with on Dragon Tattoo and Tron, I had the same type of relationship with him. And I think that's because we're all old. I think that we have a kind of mutual respect for what other people do.
I love that. And can you talk a little bit about um, developing characters and there's a question about how you work with the director on this, but I'm curious to hear about all the people who you collaborate with to really develop a character and their look. I'm sure you speak with the production designer, the actors, costume designers. What is that process like, and what do you bring to the table, and what kinds of questions do you bring to collaborators to help find that character?
I think every film poses it's a unique kind of set of circumstances. You can work on a film where I'm the first to say this has nothing to do with me. This film has not got, which is, years ago I turned down a really great film called Arrival. And I turned it down because there was nothing in it for me. It would have been boring. And I was in a great position in my life to be able to turn something down, and do something else. But there are films where you read a script and this is not, there's no makeup elements. There are many films with no costume elements, and it's very hard sometimes for a costume designer to go, shit, I've got one shirt. It's like a t-shirt. The whole movie's one night, and it's an actor in a t-shirt. So I like to be busy and I love a challenge. If I don't have a sick, nervous feeling in my stomach, it's not for me. I somehow know that if I feel like I really would like to vomit once I've taken a job, then that's the job for me. I like to solve a problem. I like developing or designing a character. I love all of that. Now, not everybody does. So I like to be with kindred spirits, and that's not always easy to find. And that you have to really hold on to. So every couple of years, you'll find a group of people and go, that really works for me. A costume designer, people, the business has become to me, very micromanaged, as I'm sure the rest of the world has been. But, I know what I'm doing, and everybody else should as well. I think I sometimes have to be a little bit more aggressive than I would like to be in order to establish that kind of rule, because I think the business, especially with newer people coming into it, are unaware that there's a lot of standing culture of filmmaking. And, the culture of theater is much more structured, and film and television used to be, certainly. And Norman Jewison, the late Norman Jewison, used to say that this is like going to, in the army and being at war, making a movie. And it absolutely is. There's a hierarchy. There's whether you like it or not, or think it's fair or not, but that's in every job. And I think going in to collaborate with people, I sort of know now, like if I go in and have a meeting, uh, example. Okay, I don't like to Google everything. I'm very original what I'll come up with, whether it's tattoos or it's a scar, and I do reading. I actually do go to a museum, and I've said to newer people, don't Google it all. Like, for God's sakes, go to a library, go find old books. I mean, I was in Vancouver a few years ago. I had an incredible experience there, but I was sort of there's old bookshops, and you find like these odd magazines and things, and you go to the theater, because I always get an idea. Something will come to me seeing something, going, I know how to use that for something else. And we're all thieves, aren't we? Essentially, you borrow an ideas, and Denis Villeneuve always said it's an element. And I keep telling people that if I see an incredible makeup that's way over the top, but I like one aspect of it, then that's an element. And I'm putting that into this. Um, when I designed the Baron in Dune, before, I hired my crew at the very beginning, it was such a hard concept because I had to sell the studio that we can do this practically. I need the right team. Now, that was harder than you think. Um, it's just another fat suit, people would say, but it's not, because a fat suit, and nobody's fat shaming, but a fat suit is always comedic. And I started this whole conversation saying everything you see with a fat suit has been used in a comedy. Mike Myers is Fat Bastard. It's always used in a derogatory, not very nice way. And how great to make a character who's obese, who's actually powerful, who breaks that, who's also quite camp. And I had to come up with a lot of ideas. And people say, well, that was Marlon Brando. I said, well, yeah, but there's more to it. How about Cardinal Richelieu? There's that campness. He's in the red robes. Um, go deeper. So people who come and work with me that come up with pictures, I'm really fascinated when they've actually gone to a library, because I'm like, when were you born? That they go to a library, that they find a photograph or a painting or inspiration. Because when you go to a creative meeting now, and I see the boards up, everyone's got the same pictures. Everyone's got the same pictures. You're like, really? So I think that's how you collaborate with people who share their information. And I'm working with the wonderful Mary Zofries right now, and I brought her something, and she was like, "Oh, I like that. Can I get that?" Where we share it and say, "Here, put that in your book." Quite a lot of hair things will often come up. I think hair is a little bit easier to show as a visual rather than Photoshop, because it never works. And makeup, particularly prosthetic makeup, you can Photoshop, but you have to be very mindful that it doesn't look too good. So if I'm designing a character with any appliance or prosthetic or three-dimensional things, I would be very careful that the director know this is a rendering. It's kind of like buying that shirt off Amazon. It's never quite right. It's never navy blue. It's never rosy pink. So I'm practical that I want to test it and show it. Production designers people like Patrice Vermette, people who really create a world, share their Bible, and then we work from that and create our own that then suit. Say, I create tattoos based on tapestries he's created, and go up to their office. People got to hang around with each other, is really what they need to do.
Yes, I 100% agree. I feel like I was a bobblehead, like sitting here nodding with you. I always love when you reiterate things that we say in other events that you were not at. I'm like, yes, go to libraries. I know Paige was smiling because she hears my library rant in every single meeting. And yeah, and just believing in the people that you're with, I think is also really important. And you were talking about some of the character development of Dune, and there was a question about the balance between fantasy and reality. And do
Mhm.
you find yourself, in these moments of deliberation, like, oh, do we need to push this further? Is this too far? And how do you balance that? Because I think Dune really toes the line very well. It feels, it's a big accomplishment to be able to balance it in that way.
I think, I mean, a lot of the credit I have to give to Patrice, the production designer, and Denis, obviously, because I think he's got good taste and knows when to. I mean, sometimes he might say that I'm not as adventurous or there are times I've gone a little overboard. There was one character, I don't mind saying it now, that played by David Desmalchin. I realize in retrospect, I think I made a mistake. I think if I could do it all over again, I think he looked a bit alien instead of Mentat. And the Mentats were I really loved because I had designed, and it took me a while to figure it out. I gave them that tattoo on their lower lip. Started off kind of rectangular, just became something. Um, a lot of people didn't understand that I didn't look at the late David Lynch's film again. I don't do that. I had an idea that they loved that, look, this thing of wine stains, and there's something quite grotesque and bizarre about it. Could it be blood? Is it this? They're highly intellectual. They're sort of the computers of their time. And so I did it as a stamp, as a kind of a tattoo. It didn't matter how it was, but we tried it on a number of things. I did it with Dr. Yu. There's something I find really interesting about people's markings because it's been done for thousands of years. And why wouldn't it be done here? But with his bald cap, what happened was, I mean, the truth of it was David, who's a darling person and a good friend of mine, he had been cast in Suicide Squad, and the terms of his contract, with a much bigger part, was that he had to have his fantastic Persian black hair. And he called me. And so I talked to the director. I did a budget for it because he would have to do this in LA and get life cast in LA. I called a few different people. It was expensive. I mean, we're talking to make those caps and do that makeup about $25,000, $30,000 for 4 days. It's a lot of money. And the test was successful, but what I realized later is that the style and the actual because of the size of his head, say unlike somebody like Austin Butler, the size of his head, it started it looked like a giant light bulb. There was something when you take a step, and people who are creative know that you draw something or you look at something and go, what the? And it suddenly really bothered me because I had all these people looking kind of gorgeous, like the Harkonnen are gorgeous. And I think the director, it was the only time I felt like he really didn't like something, and we had to adjust it quite a bit in post. Nothing to do with application. My team did, I mean, state of the art, beautiful. Two people, 4 hours, but it looked like it belonged in Star Trek and not in Dune, if that makes sense. Um, there are other things I've done. I mean, I love doing, like in Blade Runner, the pink. I mean, we changed that wig because I didn't do the hair on that film. I wished I had, but we changed it, and I really pushed to change her hair because the DP felt we needed contrast, but you couldn't paint uh, Ana de Armas pink. Now, the interesting thing that happened with that was that when she was cast, I didn't know Ana de Armas. I'd never worked with her. The the director and the cinematographer wanted this pink lady. Well, pink is a lot of colors to different people. So ask, take a strip of pink from bubblegum pink to a fuchsia pink and everybody's got an idea of what pink is. Well, try painting somebody pink who's also Cuban, who now has a very strong yellow undertone to their skin. And unlike, say, somebody with your skin tone, that the pink is going to pull blue. I know what color it's going to be. So suddenly this is different. The pink on her. So that was another thing. And she worked only a couple of days, and we hand painted that. Interestingly enough, people to this day think that Ana de Armas painted pink is CGI, and it's not. It's a practical makeup. That girl got painted in pink, top to bottom, um, in European body art. And that's the beauty of what we do is people say, is that real? And then she's projected onto Ryan Gosling's face, which then turns his face, which I've covered in blood, and my homage to, Jack Nicholson in Chinatown, and it turns the blood on his face pink. It's kind of fabulous. It's one of those accidents, but it's not. It's meant to be. And it's my favorite thing, I think.
That's such a great story. There is also there's a question about considering skin tones and ethnicities
Yeah.
with your color palette choices. I
Mhm.
wasn't expecting it to go down the rabbit hole of Anna de Armas being completely pink. That's
Uh-huh.
such a good
Uh-huh.
story. But I think even with simpler makeup choices, how do you take these considerations and do you do tests?
Yeah. Well, you try to. A lot of films can't afford to. I mean, they just, sometimes I don't like them. Like actors who don't rehearse. I get it. I mean, I think the best work can be done. Just, I'm very fast. I have a thing about working quickly. I don't like to overthink it. I think the best makeups are ones. Um, I saw something that made me laugh the other day. It'll upset all my hair and makeup friends, particularly hairstylists. Um, they were talking about The Crown, the TV show, which I had the very good fortune of being offered, and I don't know why I passed on it, but whatever. Claire Foy is a remarkable actress. And in this sort of documentary, The Making of the Crown, they were doing behind the scenes makeup and hair. And later on, they interviewed Her Royal Highness Princess Anne about her hair, which she's had a unique hairstyle for 50 years, right? She's what, 75? And it made me laugh so much because she said, well, I guess she'd been to the set to see what they were doing. And she found it fascinating because she said, well, I do this in 10 minutes, right? It made me laugh. It was very funny. And she kind of explained how she does this thing. And it's quite a dated, rather funny hairstyle, but it's her and people love it. And she said, but it was so interesting that the actor and the people doing it told me it takes them an hour. And it made me laugh so much because I think that's what people forget is there's creating fantasy is one thing because the audience are expecting, they're anticipating a great fantasy, a Lord of the Rings or something extraordinary that they know the person's in makeup. They don't believe that to be real. Mrs. Doubtfire was Robin Williams in that makeup. But there is something remarkable about people not realizing that somebody has done all that hair and a wig to look like that. And it took them 45 minutes to an hour. That made me laugh. They wouldn't be on my trailer doing that. But I think there's a lot of subtlety and things you don't see that make me think it's very good quality work because to be invisible and not noticed is very hard to do. And simple is hard. And I've racked my brains over makeup and hair and prosthetics on things where you think it's just something wrong. It doesn't feel like that person. I go and watch people all the time in the movies or and see how people really look. And it's very hard to explain to a team sometimes because I just think they're not looking. But if you look, you really can understand how people do look. How do rich people look? How do poor people? I mean, there is a way. You see that at high school. It starts there. And so I guess, getting back to like cinema verite or documentary style movies or films where people are supposed to look authentic is very hard for people to do. Um, an actress once said to me, a great friend of mine, Kate Nelligan, who she retired, she said to me, she always calls me Possum. She said, Possum, I just don't know what it is about telly these days. She said, the actors turn up and they kind of look okay. And then they leave the trailer and they look effing awful. And she's absolutely right. Just, and I know what she means. Suddenly there's like lip thing or the hair and I think it's very hard for because people really want to do beautiful work. And I see it sometimes when, it's a little bit like when you're cooking a meal, not that I'm a great cook, but how you prepare people, how you get the whole meal going, or if you have to wash a window or a screen and you leave a streak. Well, sometimes you can leave that streak. The Christmas tree, I want an asymmetric Christmas tree. I don't need it perfect, but not everyone works that way. So therefore, there are people who get called for doing jobs that I certainly would never touch. So I always tell my agents, if and when I'm lucky enough to get multiple calls, don't put me up for anything with furry feet and pointy ears because I'm not your guy. Lord of the Rings
Amen.
is not for me. Um, I would sooner die than work on one of those. Um, but there's something about transforming people in a recognizable way that I think lends to the performance and lends to a lot of things that I like. So I think those films are based in reality, which is why it made sense. And also, oddly enough, kind of based in fashion too, because I learned that from Tom Ford, who I probably learned more aesthetically from, um, because he's an architect first before he's a fashion designer and before being a film director and writer, which he's a very good one. But Nocturnal Animals was an excellent lesson in how to create fashion looks, things that you would see in a magazine, things that you see based in reality, with all these eclectic characters, all those women, all red hair, but all different. Um, and he really is. I mean, he's the only director I've ever worked with that is in the makeup and hair trailer, and it's kind of fantastic because every character it comes out of his head and he presents it in a book to you. You don't even have to read the script. He shows you the pictures of what element it is, and then you take it from there.
With these considerations about real people and noticing how people actually exist in the world, does that affect your choice in brands that you select for each project?
Um,
Or what are your considerations with brands?
well, I think brands are kind of well, it's a little twofold here because I'm a terrible snob, and I guess part of it is a lot of companies because I do a lot of work outside, like I hate saying charitable work, but because I do it because I love it. But I like to work with a lot of new people, young filmmakers, whether they're actors, directors, production designers. I mean, and I think we met at one of those events. Where what was it in LA at like a British High Commission or something?
Yeah.
And I think that working with young people, not just young people, older people, um, I've developed relationships with some companies that because they've been so supportive, I I'm a little biased. I feel like if they help us, if they help the community, then I'm more prone to use them on my films. Um, I also like very high quality products. I don't I guess you could say bougie, but yeah, I do. And I think, say, something like Tron Ares, I wanted, custom, the best Japanese from Tokyo, especially for the girls. I really wanted it to be things that you can't find anywhere. And I mean, uh, I think that's important. I think it's important for the actor. I think they get a sense of the character, um, having beautiful things. Um, but also, it is very important to me because it's so tough to get money, to get financing, to get support for young people. For instance, Artcraft New York, as we know, um, it's very difficult. In LA, I've just been, to a school. I've been going there for 12, 13 years, at Washington Prep, which is, an underserved neighborhood and certainly an underserved school, where the majority of kids, if not all of the kids, are people of color, and they're very much forgotten. And I'm sort of ashamed of the industry sometimes that I can't get my suppliers. So, having said that, the suppliers who are good to me in return, I always try to help them and get as much in. So, but no, I don't pay. I know there's certain things I like and neutrals and I don't like I like very messy makeup. I like things to feel that the actress put it on. I was very strict about that with the wonderful late great Brittany Murphy when we did 8 Mile. I said, if we're going to have you looking kind of, what's the word? Not a good word, cheap, trashy. If you're looking that part, then you've got to be putting makeup on in the scene because I don't understand films where people wear makeup because most people, if you really look around, are not really wearing makeup. If you think about it, really, and they don't wear lipstick. I mean, this thing of lipstick in movies is, I mean, unless it's Downton Abbey and it's meeting the Duchess of so and so, the average woman today outside there, Toronto, Montreal, Los Angeles, New York, is not wearing lipstick. So suddenly in a film, you're like, why are they wearing lipstick? And TV, they're all wearing it. And you kind of, unless it's a fantasy. So I'm a little bit crazed about how you present because doing that no makeup look is really the skill. That's a tremendous skill to make somebody look when you see them at 4 in the morning, all puffy and sleep deprived and not enough coffee and everything, and they come out looking like just a little bit better is I think really an accomplishment.
Gonna start paying attention to people on the street so much more now.
So interesting.
I have a question,
Um,
if that's
yeah,
okay.
yes.
Um,
Hi.
about hi, I'm Paige. Nice to meet you.
Hey.
Um, Going off of that, like authenticity, what's authentic for the character? Like sometimes in production design, it would be authentic for somebody to have a really ugly or unstyled apartment. Like I would imagine with makeup, sometimes it's authentic for a character to be really bad at makeup or to have this feature that stands out that you might get pushback on, I would assume, or
Yeah,
sometimes
yeah,
occasionally. I imagine
sure.
you have a lot of autonomy now, but when you get pushback, how do you navigate that, or how do you advocate for your image or what you want to see or think would be
It's
authentic?
really interesting because it depends if you're in a position where you have a lot of, as you said, autonomy. Not every film is like that. Sometimes everybody's an expert in what you do, and it's really annoying. But it's funny you say that because certain things work. Like if you have a character who wears baggy, funny clothes, it's you can do it, right? They're a little frumpy or whatever. Um, I think the difference sometimes is that doing nothing is, to me, a little bit of a skill because it's very hard to say to somebody, you don't need anything. I mean, it's kind of, it offends some people, but sometimes doing nothing is really the greatest achievement that you don't do it. I mean, there are actors who famously, Betty Davis did her own makeup for whatever happened to Baby Jane because no one could do that. I mean, it was just so. Um, But then there are other things. For instance, I'll give you an example. Many years ago, I went to, it was a very good film, I think, called Margaret's Museum, and it was filmed in Cape Breton, Nova Scotia, and in the UK. And everybody told me who were miners, like typical mine, like probably pre-war, that miners, all the men, they get covered in black, that coal dust, and it coats their eyelashes and their eyebrows. So everybody has like Karl Marx, black eyebrows, big eyebrows and lashes, and it looks like mascara. And the director had said to me, I really want that in the character. And I was like, oh, good luck with that. Because it's a subtlety. It's so nuanced that the audience will not. They'll think the makeup artist was a total, absolute screw up. Um, Another good one is like when you get, the old ladies that put their lipstick on the bus and they miss a spot. That's a very hard thing to accurately depict in a film. I saw something, I won't say it because you're all going to go, God, that's not nice. But it's a very interesting look, but it didn't come across because the character to me would have had somebody fix it and not let them walk around with that. So certain subtleties. Years ago on a wonderful movie called Sicario, there was a close up on this man's hand, and the director wanted him to be a chain smoker, and that there's cigarette butts and ashtrays all by his bed, and they live in complete squalor and endless cigarettes. And he wanted those nicotine stained fingers, which we don't see so much anymore. I couldn't do it. Nothing worked, no matter what color, a pigment of yellow or ochre. We tried liquids, we tried alcohol based, water based. Nothing evoked it. It just looked like an old bruise or something. It was so I think you have to also wonder sometimes that Richard Thomas, who is a wonderful actor, known really for the Waltons, but he's much more than that, had said to me one time when I was very young, um, he said, if it doesn't show, don't do it. And I thought, that's so interesting. It is very interesting because I do know a lot of makeup artists that get caught up on things that don't show. And I do wonder, and I'm guilty of it because I sometimes think it does help the performer. Riz Ahmed, who I just love him, and I did his first American film, Nightcrawler, wanted the character to have some background of either self-abuse or something. And so I said, okay. And I pulled up his sleeve and I kind of very quickly out of kit did a big scar for him, like somebody who's self-abused. And it really helped him. And I was very happy. It was a pleasure to help him. He turned in an incredible performance in Nightcrawler, and he's, a huge star now. But I do think that there are certain things, some actors will put a rock in their shoe. The British actors were famous for bringing their own shoes because you have to live in them. So, there's things like that, but it's very hard. I think costume and art direction are able to do that a little bit more. But then having said that, I've also been on a lot of films where the actors will look or I'll kind of go, wow, they live here. Is this like Fifth Avenue? They live on Madison Avenue, and that's also a very interesting thing, especially when you work overseas, when you have an art department, say from Budapest, and you're doing a film that takes place in New York, is what their interpretation of a New York apartment is. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Paige. Are there any other questions from folks? And another pre-submitted question. Someone was asking about with your prosthetics work, what are some of the longer applications that you've done, and how do you keep talent entertained and comfortable when you're dealing with an hours long application?
Well, usually if it's a big assignment and I've got a team on, I had 5 people on Dune to do Stellan. He didn't take as long as everybody says. I think people think you're just going to win an Oscar if it took 10 hours. And, I'm sorry. I think it's ridiculous. You know, uh, he took, when he's wearing clothes, 3.5 hours, 4 hours. And when he didn't have clothes on, he took closer to 6. But all this 8 hours and 9 hours and 10 hours, I just find it so interesting. Um, it doesn't make the makeup better. Um, I think it depends. When I first started my first big job where I was entrusted to be the third assistant on the fly on Jeff Goldblum, I can't remember. Stefan did amazing. Stefan Dupuis and Chris Wallace and Margaret Becerra were the leads. I was the assistant, 21 years old. I think that makeup was 5 hours, if I'm not mistaken. It was a full-on suit that he put on, and then the face. And but I would say typically like 3 hours are those more elaborate makeups. And you're not seeing so many of those films anymore. I mean, you've got this year, what, Frankenstein, but it's already on TV. I mean, you've got all these films that are doing fewer and fewer. I was very proud to have brought back a kind of practical makeup, and then The Whale came the year after and did incredible work. But you're not seeing a lot of that anymore. And people don't, I don't know, maybe people aren't going to do so many of those films. It's a lot of labor. It's a lot of labor. I loved the French movie last year, Substance, because it was really practical, down and dirty, makeup effects. And I thought it was very effective.
Yeah, I agree. The substance was amazing. And I was also thinking about what you were talking about earlier with people being naturalistic. Marty Supreme, Timothy Chalamet looked
Yeah.
great. The texture on his skin, and
Yeah.
I really appreciate when actors are willing to, especially something like skin texture. I think people don't
So,
realize like that's an
yeah.
application.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and they did those transfer. That was very good. Uh, I've just lost. Mike Fontaine did that. It was very clever. Yeah. And Kira, they did a good job.
Yeah, that's great. Um, in reflecting on your own career, are there projects that you're the most proud of or specific characters you're the most proud of? And are there still genres or topics that you would like to work in?
I it's interesting because you start to change a little bit. The job I'm on right now, Behemoth, I love it. It's a real movie. It's kind of no nonsense. It's just no nonsense, no pretense. They're nice people. Pedro Pascal, Olivia Wilde, Ava Victor. If anybody hasn't seen Sorry Baby, it's very clever. Um, you know, just really grown up. I mean, Tony Gilroy is a writer director. He's been around New York, director writer. Michael Clayton was his first film. Go figure. And so he's written all these things in Andor and television and movies. And his brother Dan is a good friend of mine who wrote and directed Nightcrawler, which is one of my favorite films. And I think Nightcrawler for me is one of my favorite films because it's very close to how I feel when I get very kind of sort of don't like the world or what I'm seeing in the business. Nightcrawler is a very good film that puts you in check and perspective of the good, the bad, and the ugly. You know, I would say looking back, something like 8 Mile really strikes a chord with me because there are things I would have done differently, obviously, but I look back at that movie. It was released in 2002. It's 23 years old, but you play that and kids today in high school will go see it. They're not going to see a lot of the other movies. Not to say that high school kids are the barometer for me for culture, but you know, the fact is somebody my age now or somebody 80 or somebody 25, they know 8 Mile. And I think that's incredible. Doing that with Mark Bridges, the costume designer. Philip Messina was the production designer, very new one at that point. Rodrigo Prieto was the cinematographer, very new at that point. Um, Eminem, I mean, Marshall Mathers, one of the most talented people I've ever met in my entire life. It takes my breath away. And nicest person. Um, and Brittany, all of them. So, I think those are highlights for me. Nocturnal Animals, probably Sicario and Prisoners as well. The earlier Denis movies, I think before it became like .com, all these big, you know, and a Blade Runner, oddly enough, because it was so hard. But crewing is hard and people don't always realize there's another aspect of what we do is like, yes, I want to do this and I'm hands-on and I want to do the makeups. But then there's also the crewing and handling people. And I have no training. I have no degree. I have no education in how to manage people. Um, but yet we're treated like producers in many respects. We're not paid like producers and but we're put in that position. You got to hire 30 people. You got to hire 40 people. Um, but no management skills really. So I think I find that very challenging. I do miss the smaller films. Sicario, I had one person, maybe two other makeup. I brought in two hair people. I think that's my ultimately where I really would like to sit now and be doing those types of films.
I really appreciate when I hear very seasoned department heads talk about how they miss being on smaller films because it really motivates me to be really happy with where I'm at in my career. Like one day I'm gonna miss this. So I always really love hearing that perspective.
You know what? I'm glad you said it because what did I watch? And I went to Canada for Christmas and coming back to LA, my flight had been delayed and there was snow and all this stuff. But I watched on the plane and it really, still got all the Academy stuff to watch. And I go to, see the big screenings and I've tried to not watch too many on Academy members room, where we get to screen all the films. And I've not been impressed. It's not a year. It's not a great year. And I love Sentimental Value and Sorry Baby, but I thought, oh, I can't watch anymore. And I clicked on the airline thing, and I watched Billy Elliot, and I thought that's a wonderful movie. That's an incredible movie, first rate. And watching that, thinking that didn't cost a lot of money, and in what costumes? makeup, hair, production design? I don't think so. Um, and I think that that's what I miss because what I'm doing now is, similar. They've recreated, Chicago Symphony, different things like that, but not, I mean, yes, world building is an incredible experience, but it takes a lot from you and you're going to give it everything and your life will be put on hold. And some people don't recover from that. And there's a big price to pay. People with kids, people with parents, and so having said that, and although Tron, I mean, uh, very sadly a disappointment in how it was received, but I loved working on the film. It was so different for me, and I loved it.
Any other questions that we have?
Yeah, can I jump in?
Hi
Yes,
Hi,
there.
please.
hi, Sam. Just a quick question. I don't want this question to come off negative, but from the more that you've spoken about some of the do-overs that you would have done design-wise, how about some of the sort of not necessarily do-overs, but times where it went really wrong as a HOD from maybe the administrative side, from the like you said earlier about the management side. Are there any times where it's gone really wrong that you maybe take from that and now sort of have a very different approach to how you handle this? Because I definitely, as a fellow makeup artist, I think we learn from those really big mistakes when just the shit hits the fan, to be quite
Yeah, well, look, I mean, I would say the bigger the crew, the more problems you're going to have. So if you're working on a smaller film or television show, whatever you're doing, and you have two or three makeup artists with you, fine. When you get into bigger jobs where the calls, and you know what I'm talking about, you get into calls where I might have a 3 a.m. call and I've got 30 people. There's going to be trouble. There's going to be a couple people who are, and it's wherever you go, whether it's Budapest or London or Glasgow or Toronto, there's always one or two people or three or four who want your job, who think they should be doing your job, who feel competitive with other people. This is particularly affects makeup and hair. I don't know why. I've had this conversation with producers, with other people. Cinematographers, the camera teams are tight. And I realize the reason they're tight is because there's so few of them. Art department can have the proper art department can have, a huge amount of people as well. But like construction, where they get into like 40 and 50 guys and girls and people. So I think it's costume, makeup, hair, some aspects of the art department, if it's huge, where there's that a lot of juxtaposing. Do you know what I mean? There's juxtaposing.
absolutely.
There's
Yeah.
always somebody like I don't know, you'll give a bald cap to somebody I've had, in one job, for instance, no one could actually make what I needed. A lot of last minute decisions. Oh, the business is last minute. I mean, people have decorated the White House and Buckingham Palace in minutes. Well, I joke, but you know what I mean. So in makeup, people sometimes forget that you may have suddenly, we got to reshoot, we're going back there. You need 10 makeup artists tomorrow. Where are you getting them? What country are you in? Are you in Budapest? You're going to have to get people from there, from Holland, from Denmark, Sweden, um, who's available. And then so you have a lot of that stuff happening. I think as an administration side, what I've learned is if I ever take another big movie on, I want a coordinator that I choose, not production. That's a big number one. I'm not, like, I love going to places like Vancouver. London's more challenging. That's a whole other discussion.
I'm in London, so yeah.
Yeah. London's very challenging. And I can tell you why. And I'll get a lot of hate mail because I get that too. Uh, London's challenging because everybody wants to be a superstar. You follow me?
Yeah, absolutely.
And you'll have a lot of people like, look, I started on the fly, my first kind of big movie, prosthetics. I chose not to really be a prosthetics guy. But when I worked on that film, I knew how lucky I was to work for Stéphane Dupuis, Margaret Becerra, Chris Walas, David Cronenberg, second time a film won an Academy Award for makeup. I knew how lucky I was to have that behind me. I got my name mentioned in the Academy Awards. It changed my life. I would never say to somebody, well, I would have done it this way and I would have done the mask that way because you know what? You didn't. You're not doing it. They're doing it. I'm doing it. And I think that's the one thing I noticed in the UK that I particularly found troublesome was that there's only 4 or 5 designers who are doing the big films, as you know. Don't have to name anybody. But what I'm getting at is basically if you want that career, like we put these posters up because I don't know what there's something I was doing. And everyone's saying, oh, well, I would have. Well, then go do what I did to get that. Because people who are on this, who have been working hard at whatever they're doing, makeup, hair, costumes, production design, know that how did you get your break? While I was doing jobs in Montreal for no money, university films, theater for operatic societies for no money, not even a bus ticket. When you are prepared to do that and give of yourself, then you earn a position in this industry. And it's called paying your dues. But now you'll have people, I think, who've come up in the world of like, suddenly we had all these films, the Dunes, the Blade Runners, the MCU, the DC films going to places where you need 30 and 40 makeup artists who are suddenly now at a level we were not able to achieve in a short period of time. Um, I had somebody tell me, and it was, beautifully made, say, oh, well, I picked apart the rubbishy ones and picked out the better ones for you. Really? And it would be like going to Rick Baker and saying, Rick, I was looking at that, and I think maybe it's not your best work. Uh, so I think that as a man, I wish now I had done more asking other people who manage people to say, is this acceptable behavior? Is that acceptable behavior? If I've been incorrect, then I'll fix it too, or I'll make amends or whatever. But I've never seen people have more done for them and then still sit back and either complain about the HOD or the designer, and you go, and I'm sure you've had this. If you're running jobs, then everybody's an expert and think, well, you know what? Go out and do those non-union, low-budget films for no money and work all night and come back with a splitting backache and headache, and earn your position is my take on it. But
But
there's
the
a
lack
lot
of
of fairness, right?
I think it's there's a lack of apprenticeship culture that's kind of
Correct.
gone away. I mean, we have the trainee program in the UK, which is
I know.
good, but with screen schools, and there are some good places, but there is that thing that if you didn't start in the era, like you said, going to museums, looking at the back of a sculpture to see how a hairstyle looks, that kind
Yeah.
of mentality, and that's apprenticeship mentality. There's this acceleration that I think is an issue. So I'm sort of glad that you actually so openly said that because I think a lot of people don't want to actually
A lot
admit
of people are
and say
talking
that.
about it. It's
Yeah.
become, it's everywhere, and it's across the board. And some people are frightened to hire younger people because they feel particularly it's not popular, but I've seen this in other, I mean, go to my doctor's office and he'll tell me the same thing. It's a different culture we're in, an expectation, and you're not really able to. It's one thing to reprimand somebody. It's another. I mean, there's bullying and there's being horrible to somebody, but there's also the ability to say, no, that's not on. You don't do that. You don't talk to that person. Um, because you can't do that in other businesses. This is the only business in the world where some behaviors are accepted, and it's got to change a little bit. And I think that people who are bitter or unhappy, look, there's a lot of unfairness in it. It's called show business, not show fun. It's very hard. It takes a lot. Believe you me, there are days I think, why did I do this? But then you hear it from other people. Um, and I do think I'm a little nervous crew. I've had some great crews. I had a great crew in Vancouver, fantastic crew. I had a fantastic crew in Mexico City. I mean, just like, because they make
Mexico City is an incredible place. So
it's an incredible place, but they also
magical,
think
yeah.
a lot of people are in a vacuum cleaner or a Hoover in your case, and they're like this. But you go to Mexico City, and people in LA said to me, "You did?" I'm like, guys, they've been making movies in Mexico City as long as they have here. Um, Mexico City crew was first rate. and they love films. I mean, they love films and they go to films. And I had an incredible crew, and they're fun and they're creative, and we had nicknames, and nobody's triggered, and they're not, there was these two girls, they're lovely, and I could never remember their names, and I tried my best in my very poquito español, but I just started calling them the French sisters because they looked like something from a film. They had this perfect hair, and it was always black parted in the middle with a bun. And it was so there was something about them. And I just said the French sisters, which they still call themselves. Um, there were characters that I haven't seen characters like that. Um, in Canada, there used to be people like that. They're not quite the same anymore. There was a quality to them you don't see. And in London too, because they'd worked on, well, let's make a list, everything. All the films went to, so people were jump starting careers going from A to somewhere up there and working on all these MCU films and working 10 months of the year. When I started, if you worked 14 weeks of the year, you were a tremendous hit. And recently, somebody had said something about, well, what's the point of taking that? What's the point of taking that course? And I said, you know what? People say that about English when you're at school or math, but you know something? I wished I had done better at math because I have to use it all the time. And English, of course, is so important because I communicate. My job is communicating, whether it's visual or with the actors or making someone understand an idea or sharing an idea with somebody. And actors are often socially quite awkward and very shy, and being able to communicate freely and be funny. And I don't see that. And I don't see it in the UK with a certain group of people. And also, there's a thing with Instagram that's really kind of messed it up because everyone's on there saying, oh, you're fabulous. Look, you're only good. You'll know when you're good. And somebody said, how will you know? I said, because people will tell you. You're not going to tell me you're good. You don't know shit. I think and you get it because you'll look at somebody and they'll say, well, nobody's ever questioned me before. And I go, well, you never worked with anybody like me. So I think it's a generational thing. People who are on here who are my age will know, like you couldn't deliver a book report and the teacher not, remember with the red pencil and say, not good enough, needs improvement. Just newsflash. I've had some crew that I just thought, did you never get told off in school? Did you never get a bad report? Did your parents never say, behave yourself? Shut up. That's stupid. I'm so triggered that they're triggered because I think, but you're getting paid to do this job. I've had people call me and say, is it okay if I take a long weekend? I said, but we're doing makeup tests on Friday. Well, yeah, but I really want to go with my boyfriend to Greece. It's not okay. I'm sorry. The dentist is okay if it's, if you need your tooth pulled. But I am from a different time, and I'm sorry for people who can't. I just recently had somebody ask me how I feel about people being sick on set. I said, what are you planning to get? MS? Like, why are we asking? I mean, that's a sign. And you know what I'm saying. So if you're in the UK, there's a lot of that going on. They'll never want to work with me, and that's just fine. That's fine. But you have to also watch your back there too, because you're managing people that we probably all have to go back to school and be, I don't know, either do that simplified course in psychoanalysis or law or youth. I don't know, whatever teachers do at teachers college, we might have to be part of that. I do know that when you critique somebody's work, it's not critiquing it. It's to say, we're too slow. The director's already said to me, Donald, what's going on? I have a tremendous responsibility. So do you. If you have to deliver on Tuesday morning at the Sony Center and the Disney Theater, I have 400 background and 14 actors. If they're not ready, it's on me. That goes to the production report. You know how that works. Production report, it gets written up. and say, Donald Mowat, blah, blah, blah. So if I have to go to my people and they're upset by that, then it's tough luck. It's a team effort. Everybody has to pull their weight. Um, you never sell your crew out. I mean, I never would do that. I stand up for them. But there is a point where you have to go to them and say, what are you doing? There's no talking on the phone. You can't look at your phone while you're with an actor. Um, there's no eating. I mean, somebody with a sandwich in their hand. I don't think that's bad to say. I've had somebody with dental floss talking to me with doing their teeth. I'm not kidding you.
I think there's just these. I think culturally, I think this isn't even an industry thing. We've culturally come to a point where it's acceptable to clip your nails on the train. I see that, and I think that
Correct.
behavior sort of
Correct.
bleeds into every aspect of our world now. And you just think, like you said, like that's shocking what you said about the dental floss, but actually, it doesn't surprise me if someone's there clipping their toenails or their fingernails on a tube.
Yeah,
It's
because
kind of
nobody will say anything.
yeah.
I mean, then I've having to said that, I was just in Toronto and there was somebody lighting a crack pipe on the subway and nobody said a word. And I thought, wow, well, I wish they were like that. No, I didn't smoke crack, by the way. Um, but back in the day, like smoking cigarettes, people used to give me such a hard time. And I thought, but you're really, oh, you have to smoke 50 feet away from the set. This is like secondhand smoke. I thought, really? But now we have people smoking a pipe. Go to Vancouver, go to Toronto, get on the subway, LA. I mean, so we're in a different time. And I think what it is we have to be very careful how and I need to work on myself. There are days I think, but for you, if you're running jobs in the UK, um, I think you have to be very upfront with people and say, look, this is what it is. And I also have learned to better my skills. Sometimes I've hired people because I liked them more than their work. Sometimes I like the work more than them. Other times I don't hire department heads typically to be my key. I've explained it to so many people, they never understand it, but there's a real reason behind it. And I hire people who are as good as me, if not better. It's really important. So I'm a little disappointed when I hire somebody who says they can do it and they can't, because I never lie. You ask anybody, I will never lie to somebody. So if it's not my familiar wheelhouse, I would appreciate people who I ask. I'm happy to teach people. I have a lot of new people. I'm happy to show them. I recently explained to somebody, it looks way better to offer an actor before you get too busy. What you want to do is ask them what they see for the character. And they sort of were surprised. And I said, no, it's an actor. You're an artist, they're an artist. They're allowed, this is their face, it's their character. They may have an idea. Let them share that with you before you tell them all your thoughts. And so I think there is I'm hopeful because I've worked with some really good newer people. I'm a little afraid. I do come to the UK, but I am a little bit afraid of some of it now because it's so also they do fewer people. In America and in Canada, the crews are smaller, right? For a lot of reasons. So that's another thing you might notice if you're doing like some telly or but we can connect if you want at some point on Instagram or Facebook, but when we can talk more. But yeah, I get it.
Yeah, I mean, I work on smaller projects as well, and I've spent most of my career working in commercial music, and it's the last few years I'm sort of shifting over to film, and I've noticed the difference of, yeah, the things you speak about. It's shocking, and I mean,
Well,
because starting in fashion 20 years ago when people were smoking while you were doing their makeup, it's kind of prepared me for some of it,
yeah,
but at
yeah.
the same time, it's kind
Well,
of
we can connect, and the
often.
art craft. What I love about someone like Art Craft New York and different things, and BAFTA do a few programs in the UK that are worth looking into. Is you have to build a community, and I love this because people who do different things. There's a shared knowledge of being able to call a production designer and say, "Hey, I'm trying to work this thing out. Do you know anybody?" Or as I really want to start getting back to that a little bit, helping on smaller films. How do we get this? Can you get a sponsor? If you can get the hair stuff or a wig, let me see if I can get this. So yeah, Any other questions?
Thank you so much, by the way.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. Thanks for being here.
We're almost out of time, but Adam had asked a question in the chat that was specifically about Ryan Gosling's character in Blade Runner 2049. There's a
Okay.
moment where the camera lingers on a shoulder wound, and Adam is wondering when you read the script and you found out there's going to be this really deep, prominent wound on screen, is that something you prefer to design practically, or do you collaborate with visual effects crew on some of the more complicated designs and find a blend between practical and digital?
Well, it's such a great question because nowadays there's so many things where, I mean, we do collaborate a lot. That was the beginning of my kind of learning to work so closely with VFX. Um, and later on, obviously, working with Paul Lambert so often, which has been incredible learning experience. Yeah, I think doing the practical makeups always. The thing that's happening now is a lot of people are ignoring practical makeup, even production, and go, oh, we'll do it this way, we'll do it that way. Everybody answers it with, we'll do the blood and post. Well, it never looks as good. There's that. Two, it's a real marriage because if they know what I do and I know what they do, chances are they don't really know what I do. Makeup's been done for thousands of years. It's not new technology. It's just not. Visual effects is new technology. And so there's many more of them manipulating computers and programs and doing what we do. So I think that there's sometimes a shortfall, and I would love it but I've made a point of trying to really work with them. So if I'm starting the cut, they're finishing it, or I'm creating the wound with a small prosthetic appliance or a transfer or a buildup or whatever. And then they come in and take it off or put it back. So there's a lot of give and take, but I think it's a very good relationship when it works well, doing things with eyes, whether you're using contact lenses. But certainly Blade Runner, that was, I think, really the only major wound. We had other things we ended up not using. It just didn't work out, like enlarging an ear and stuff like that. But yeah, it's very good to work really where you can I do it this far and then VFX take it? I think that's really the ultimate.
Yeah, we have some questions about VFX on the last AMA as well. So I think we're going to try to find someone from VFX to come and do one of these AMAs as well, because I think that's been a common question.
I think that would be
So
great. Yeah.
stay tuned, join our email list, follow us on Instagram because we're going to keep doing more of these. And these events are all guided by what people tell me they want. This is not just me sitting here being like, I think the people need to hear this. It's that people come to me and write to me about what they want to learn about, people they want to meet or experience. So there's a lot of new faces here today. Please don't be shy and join our community. And I'm happy that today has been a more international event. We're trying to really be able to, as the industry is becoming more international, I think we all need to be talking and supporting each other more. So, Donald, do you want to have any closing comments or final advice to people who?
I'm very happy everybody came on, and it's great to see so many familiar people. I see Naomi, a very good makeup artist from Vancouver. I see a few other people. Deanne, who I grew up with, artist, painter. I see. Yeah, so it's great to see people. And, I really think it's nice because, like you said, people are working all over the world. They're doing different things. Some are, in the trenches, some are not. Some would like to be. Some of us are trying to get out of it. I mean, we're in different stages, and I guess all I ever really say to people if when I'm teaching or going to schools is that everybody's journey is different. I mean, you can't really compare how one career goes to another. Actors are very good at that. That's what I think is so interesting. We could borrow from them because other creative people, artisans and craftspeople and artists, I think often compare, and it's not a really good thing, not emotionally or mentally. Um, I think actors really understand that because they're all unique, they're different and you can't really, compare them. So I think with us, it's different. We have different skills. You can almost feel it, like why a director, the film I'm doing right now, I know there's always other people up for it. You're never the only one. And I remember thinking, why me? And so that's back to Blade Runner because it wasn't my wheelhouse, that kind of sci-fi. And then somebody said, well, why wouldn't it be? And I never realized how the sort of things I like and the aesthetic I like is based very much in that world. And so it worked very well. Other people would want to come in and do a kind of a fantasy look, which would be wrong. They'd be highly disappointed. And I think that's what I was getting at to the man who was speaking from the UK, a makeup artist, is that sometimes you'll have crew who are actually on the wrong thing. They're very, very good at what they do, but they're on the wrong job. I guess if you paint in oil and you're suddenly doing watercolor, you're not going to feel good. And I think you have to really work at the things you like, which I guess really means I should only work on movies I would go and see, if that makes sense. Because if it's not a movie I'm into and I don't like it or I don't like the script I won't be helpful to lend anything visually to the characters and to help the actors realize the part. So I think that's really important. And also this thing about anxiety, because so many people ask me, and I said, but it's not abnormal. Nobody invented that. That's been around forever. It's not a new thing, a phenomenon. It's, nervousness, stage fright. All actors, by the way, all actors have stage fright, all of them. If they don't, they're terrible. And if you take a film and you say, oh my God, why did I do this? What am I doing? It's great. It's a challenge. You're going to take it on and do it. If it's too, this is easy peasy, I think then you've lost maybe the love a little bit, which you go through periods of. So that's the other thing. It's okay to have periods where you hate it. I'm going to walk away. I'm going to go retrain and become an X-ray technician. I don't know. I mean, people say it all the time, and I go, I get it, but no. Well, thanks everybody. Happy New Year.
Thank you, Donald, and thank you
Thank
all so
you.
much for being here. We're going to upload this video to our
Okay.
YouTube channel a little bit
You make
later
us look cute.
today.
You make us cuter. Just do a little post.
Yes,
Little post.
absolutely.
Little
You
bit
all
here.
look beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you all so much for being here, and I hope to continue connecting with you guys and see you at future events. Have a good
Thank
day.
you,
Thanks,
Donald.
everybody.
Very inspirational.
Hi,
Thank you,
hey
Sharon. Thank
you.
you, Donald. That
Happy
was
New
wonderful.
Year.
Thank
Happy
you.
New
Happy
Year.
New Year.
Everyone.
Bye. Bye, everybody.